Let me start by saying I never wanted to be a wedding photographer. I wanted to shoot wildlife, lions, tigers, maybe a grumpy bear. But bears don't pay in cash, and brides' mothers do. So for 15 years, I stood in churches, parks, and muddy fields, yelling, "Smile like you mean it," at couples who had already signed 3-year efficiency contracts with the Ministry of Emotional Optimization. Yeah, that ministry. The one that rates your love life like a restaurant review. If your attachment score drops below 7.2, they send you a polite email suggesting you reassess your partnership viability. Romantic, right? Wedding photography became obsolete. Because if love is scheduled and contracted, why pay a guy with a heavy camera to capture spontaneous joy? Just download the AI-generated wedding package. Same smile, same bouquet, same fake sunset. Cheaper, too. So I was the last one. The only photographer in the city who still used film. Not because film was better. It was slower, more expensive, and made my fingers smell like chemicals. But because I was stubborn. And broke. That's how I ended up in a dusty studio on a Tuesday morning, staring at a man who wanted to marry an empty chair. His name was Okan Demir. 32, sharp cheekbones, sad eyes that looked like they'd cried all the tears they had and were now running on fumes. He wore a crisp black suit that probably cost more than my rent, but his hands shook when he held out the contract. "I need you to take pictures of me," he said, pretending he's here. He pointed at the wooden chair across from him. It had a faded cushion and a wobbly leg. No groom, no bouquet, just Okan and that sad, lonely chair. I blinked. "Sir, are you proposing to IKEA furniture?" He didn't laugh. His name is Amir. He was erased by the government. 3 years ago, they said our attachment was inefficient, too emotional, too unproductive. I put my camera down. Erased? Like they killed him? Worse, they deleted his records, his social profile, his birth certificate. Every photo of us together. Gone. Legally, he never existed. To the ministry, I was just a man with a maladaptive fixation. They gave me 6 months of therapy and a fine for excessive sentimentality. He sat in the chair opposite the empty one. But I remember him, and I want proof. One last wedding album. Me pretending he's there. So at least someone, even if just me, knows he was real. I should have said no. I should have told him the ministry monitors all photography licenses, and I'd end up erased too. But I looked at his face, that desperate, hopeful, broken face, and I heard myself say, 2,000 credits. Half up front, and I get to pick the music. He smiled. First time. It was like watching a cracked dam hold back a flood. Week 1, we shot in the park where they had their first date. Okan sat on a bench, arm extended over the backrest, angled like someone was leaning into him. He talked to the empty air. "Amir used to steal my fries," he said, laughing. He'd say, "Sharing is caring," and I'd say, "Stealing is stealing," and he'd kiss my nose to shut me up. I snapped pictures. Click, Okan smiling at nothing. Click, Okan pointing at a duck. Click, Okan pretending to feed that duck to his imaginary lover. "You know," I said, "most grooms yell at me for not getting their good side. You're the most cooperative client I've ever had." That's because Amir isn't here to argue about the lighting. I lowered the camera. "Tell me more about him." That was my first mistake. Because once Okan started talking, he couldn't stop. And I couldn't stop listening. Amir was a baker. Not the corporate kind, the real kind, with flour under his nails and a laugh that sounded like a kettle whistling. He made sourdough that could bring grown men to tears. He sang off-key while kneading dough. He had a birthmark on his left wrist that looked like a tiny heart. Okan told me all of this over the next 3 weeks. Every session, we went to a new location. The bridge where they kissed in the rain, the alley where Amir rescued a stray cat, the rooftop where they watched a meteor shower and made up constellations with silly names. I photographed Okan holding an invisible hand, Okan feeding cake to an empty plate, Okan dancing with no one in a ballroom that echoed with silence. And somewhere between frame 347 and frame 412, I realized I was falling in love with Emir. Not the real Emir. I'd never met him. But the Emir in Okan's stories, the Emir who hated cilantro but loved pickles, the Emir who cried during cartoons and punched walls when he was happy, the Emir who, according to Okan, was the most alive person on the planet. That was the problem. I was falling for a ghost who might still be breathing somewhere. "He's alive," Okan whispered one evening. We were in my studio, developing prints. The red light made us both look like vampires. I know it. The ministry doesn't kill people. They just relocate them, reset them, give them new names, new faces, new memories. Somewhere out there, Emir is walking around, thinking his name is something else, thinking he never met me. I stared at a print developing in the chemical tray. Okan's hand reached toward the empty chair. The image was hauntingly beautiful. "I have a friend," I said slowly, "in the archives division. She hates the ministry. She might be able to run a search." Okan grabbed my arm. His grip was steel. "Do it. I'll pay anything." "You already paid me. Now I'm doing this because I want to meet him too." That was the second mistake, admitting it out loud. Okan's eyes narrowed, but he didn't ask what I meant. Maybe he already knew. Maybe he saw the way I softened every time I mentioned Emir's name. My friend Zara was a miracle worker. She also owed me 1,200 credits from a bad bet on robot horse racing. 3 days later, she called with a location. "He's in Thessaloniki," she said over a crackling connection. "New identity, Dimitris Papadopoulos. Works at a bakery," irony, "and has no recollection of his previous life. They wiped him clean. But the biometric data matches. It's him." Thessaloniki was 4 hours by train. Okan packed a bag before I could finish the sentence. "We go tonight," he said. "We?" I asked. "You want the photographer to come rescue your ex-lover? You want to meet him, don't you?" He didn't say it with jealousy. He said it with something stranger. Approval. Like he was handing me the keys to his most precious memory and saying, "Go on, see if he fits you better." I grabbed my coat. Thessaloniki smelled like sea salt and grilled sardines. We found the bakery on a corner street called Odysseos. Inside, a man with flour on his apron was pulling a tray of golden loaves from the oven. He was tall, broad shoulders, a birthmark on his left wrist, tiny and heart-shaped. Emir. Or Dimitris. Whatever he was now. Okan froze at the door. I pushed him inside. "You order," I whispered. "I'll just stand here and try not to hyperventilate." Emir, let's call him that, because Dimitris is a terrible name for a romantic hero, looked up. He had kind eyes, the color of hazelnuts. "Welcome," he said, in perfect Greek-accented English. "What can I get you?" Okan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I stepped forward. "2 coffees, please, and one of those croissants that looks like it's trying to be a spaceship." Emir laughed. That kettle whistle laugh. I nearly fainted. We sat at a tiny table. Okan stared at Emir like he was a ghost, which technically he was. Emir brought our order, and I caught his wrist. "Nice birthmark," I said. "Looks like a heart." Emir blinked. "I've had it since I was a kid. My mother used to say it meant I was destined to love someone impossible."
Okan choked on his coffee. I leaned forward. "What if I told you that someone is sitting right here? And also, your name isn't Dimitris, it's Emir. And you used to sing off-key while kneading dough, and you stole fries from this sad man across the table, and you watched meteors on a rooftop and named one Giraffe because you were terrible at naming things." Emir stepped back. His face went pale. That's not possible. I have documents. I have a life here." "You have a wipe," I said gently. "The ministry erased you. But memories don't die, Emir. They just hide. Look at Okan. Really look." Okan stood up. Tears were streaming, but he was smiling. "I used to kiss your nose to shut you up," he whispered. "Remember? You stole my fries. I kissed your nose. You called me an idiot." Amir's hand trembled. He touched his own nose. Something flickered in his eyes, like a light switch turning on in a dark room. "Okan?" His voice cracked. I dream about you. Every night. I thought it was just imagination." "It wasn't," Okan said. "It was us." They embraced. Flour exploded everywhere. I snapped exactly one picture, a blurry shot of two men crying and hugging and ruining a perfectly good croissant. It became my favorite photograph ever. Now, you might wonder where I fit into all this. Fair question. I was wondering the same thing. Because there I was, standing in a bakery in Thessaloniki, covered in flour and third-wheeling so hard I deserved a medal. Eventually, Emir looked at me. Really looked at me. "And who's the photographer?" he asked, with a smile. "Ivo," I said. "And I've spent 3 weeks hearing stories about you. Your sourdough, your laugh, your war crimes against French fries." Emir laughed, the kettle whistle laugh. Great, now I was doomed. "You know," he said, "it's a little unsettling meeting someone who already knows I sing terribly." "Oh, trust me," I said. "Nothing could have prepared me for the reality." Okan laughed so hard he nearly spilled his coffee. And for the first time in 3 years, the three of us laughed together. Getting Emir reinstated took time. Getting his memories back took even longer. Some memories returned all at once. Others came in dreams, in songs, in the smell of fresh bread at 6 in the morning. Sometimes he'd remember something and call Okan in tears. Sometimes he'd remember nothing at all and get frustrated enough to threaten innocent loaves of bread. But Okan stayed. Always. Not because he expected anything in return. Just because love, real love, isn't a contract. It doesn't disappear because life changes. And life had changed. The Emir who came back wasn't exactly the same man Okan had lost. And Okan wasn't the same man who had spent 3 years talking to an empty chair. Somewhere between memories and new beginnings, they discovered something strange. They still loved each other, just differently. And surprisingly, that was enough. I stayed in Thessaloniki longer than I planned. Then longer than that. Emir and I became friends, then very good friends. Then one night, 6 months later, while closing the bakery, he looked at me over a tray of burnt cinnamon rolls and said, "You know, for a photographer, you're incredibly bad at taking hints." "What hints?" "The ones where I've been in love with you for 3 months." I dropped a loaf of bread. He laughed. Then he kissed me. And this time, nobody was surprised. Least of all Okan. Finally, he said. Do you know how exhausting it is being emotionally smarter than both of you? Zara leaked the ministry's erasure program to the press and caused a scandal so enormous that the efficiency ratings died a slow, very public death. Okan and Emmer opened a bakery together, not as lovers, as family. And I sold my studio and moved to Thessaloniki.
I still take wedding photos. Real ones.
Messy ones. The kind where people laugh too hard and cry too much, and someone inevitably drops the cake. And every anniversary, Amir and I visit my apartment, where an old wooden chair with a faded cushion sits in the corner. The sad chair. The chair that started everything. Amir sits across from me, smiling. I take a picture. And for a second, reflected in the window behind us, I swear I can see another version of our lives sitting there. Not a ghost, not a memory, just love. The kind nobody gets to erase. And that, my friends, is still the best wedding I ever shot.